Good morning to one and all present here. Myself Mevish Fatima from Department of Biotechnology. On behalf of organizing committee, I take this opportunity to welcome our principal, Dr. Mazhar Ahmed Farooqi sir, Principal Maulana Azad College of Arts, Science and Commerce. I also welcome Dr. Arif Pathan sir, in charge director, Dr. Rafiq Zakaria Center for Higher Learning and Advanced Research. Hearty welcome to our academic expert, Dr. Ahmed Ali sir, all the teaching fraternity and dear students. Now I request our principal to kindly say few words. Over to you, sir. Hello. Now I request our principal to kindly say few words. Hello, sir.
महेश मैडम अभी सर ज्वाइन हो रहे हैं, डिस्कनेक्ट हो गए, शायद नेटवर्क का प्रॉब्लम है।
ओके सर।
हाँ, फिर से रिपीट बोलना सब सेंटेंस।
ओके। Now I request our principal to
वेट अभी ज्वाइन नहीं कर रहे होंगे।
नेटवर्क प्रॉब्लम मौसम नहीं आ रहा।
हाँ, अब आ गए। हाँ, स्टार्ट करो मैडम।
On behalf of organizing committee, I take this opportunity to welcome our principal, Dr. Mazhar Ahmed Farooqi sir, Principal Maulana Azad College of Arts, Science and Commerce. I also welcome Dr. Arif Pathan sir, in charge director, Dr. Rafiq Zakaria Center for Higher Learning and Advanced Research. Hearty welcome to our academic expert, Dr. Ahmed Ali sir, all the teaching fraternity and dear students. Now I request our principal to kindly say few words.
Good morning. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Today's speaker, Dr. Ahmed Ali sir, Dr. Arif Pathan sir, all organizing committee members and dear participants. Indeed, today's topic is very interesting and it will be useful to each and everyone, because we know that everyone is having some near and dear with diabetic symptoms.
सर अनम्यूट कीजिए।
Regarding diabetic, diabetes, and we know that overall one can estimate that 10% of the population is having such type of infection. It is a disorder, one can say, and it cannot be cured, but it can be treated, and the sugar can be in a controlled way monitored like that. Secondary, we know that there are so many secondary effects of this sugar. I personally know some persons, some relatives, those are suffering from frozen shoulder, having some kidney problems and some other type of problems because of this sugar. Hypertension is also there. and secondary effects are also quick. All these are sugar-induced changes. So in that way, this today's lecture will be very useful. It will throw the light on all these aspects, how these sugar-induced changes are taking place in our body and like that, and how to control, suppose, all these things. So I congratulate the Department of Biotechnology and all other organizing committee members that they have arranged a very nice lecture today. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for addressing today's session. Being the convener of today's session, I will introduce our academic expert, Dr. Ahmed Ali, sir. Dr. Ahmed Ali, sir, is currently working as Assistant Professor in the Department of Life Sciences, University of Mumbai, India. Earlier, he worked in the National Institute of Pharmaceutical Education and Research. He studied at Jamia Hamdard and University of Mumbai, obtaining his MSc and PhD degree in biochemistry and life sciences, respectively. He has over 16 years of teaching and research experience. Presently, he is heading the Molecular Biochemistry Laboratory in the department where he is guiding MSc and PhD students. His areas of research are protein and DNA biochemistry with special contributions on glycation of biomolecules, DNA damage, and anti-glycating properties of natural products. He has also made significant contributions in the area of artificial sweeteners and their role in the process of glycation. Cyanobacterial systems are another thrust area in his lab, where researchers are exploring various applications of these organisms in the field of cosmetics and health benefits. He has received several extramural grants from government and private funding agencies. He has collaborators from national and international laboratories. He is serving as the reviewer and member of editorial board of various international journals like Chemosphere, Frontiers in Plant Sciences and Microbiology, Glycobiology, International Journal of Biological Macromolecules, Annals of Phytomedicine, and other journals of Elsevier and Springer. He has contributions more than 35 research articles in peer-reviewed international journals. He is also author of one book and several book chapters from Springer and Elsevier publishing houses. He has presented his work in many international and national conferences as invited speaker and resource person. He has also worked as member of organizing committee for many of these conferences. After brief introduction of our academic expert, may I now request Dr. Ahmed Ali, sir, to take over the session and enlighten us with the topic, sugar-induced changes in the structure of biomolecules in hyperglycemic condition. Over to you, sir.
Good morning to all. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum. At the outset, I'll be thankful to Principal Mazhar sir, Arif Padhan sir, whom I know indirectly through various other platforms, through their lectures and through their restaurants presentation and other activities. And it has been a long desire of me to visit the Maulana Azad campus because I can see lots of activities are going on. So I wish to visit, but let's begin with this kind of interaction. So I'm thankful to all the organizing committee members for inviting me to deliver a lecture on this topic. And I congratulate all the team members. So I think the topic itself may be a bit surprising or maybe looking a bit difficult for our UG students whom I hope I am addressing them also because I can see many researchers and many established faculties are here. So for them, it will not be a very difficult thing to understand. But let me make it very simple. I'm going to talk about the process of diabetes and what our molecules do during that process. So basically, I'll be talking some aspects of biochemistry of diabetes in very simple terms. So may I start my presentation?
Yes, sir.
I guess I Is my screen visible? Hello?
Yes, sir, your screen is visible, sir.
Yes. Okay. I may have not mentioned the name of Mrs. Mehwish Fatma. She has been coordinating since last 15-20 days for this this lecture and this event. So I'm thankful the way she has coordinated and organized this. It is really indeed remarkable. So as the topic was mentioned to you, that it is sugar-induced changes in the structure of biomolecules and hyperglycemic conditions. So let it put it very simply, that what we are going to discuss about in this lecture is that what happens when there is an increase in the sugar level, and what are the molecular changes and what are the molecular interactions do happen, and what are the consequences of that. So somewhere you might have seen that these kind of terms come across, that we are worried about our skin wrinkling and aging process. So whether this process of sugar interaction is involved in that or not. So this I found in another website. It's not a very scientific way to represent, but I found it that somewhere it is mentioned that sugar can give wrinkles to you. The basic mechanism is that the sugar level, if it is increased beyond a level, it interacts with the proteins which are there in our cellular system, and one of them is collagen, which is there in the extracellular matrix. So this interaction leads to breakdown of our skin system, and that leads to wrinkles. And many of us are now aware about the diabetes and their consequences. So we might have seen this kind of chart also, like what are the symptoms when someone has diabetes, and what are the complications, and how do we prevent. So you might see in the prevention that cycling, exercise, and visiting a doctor is mentioned, because till 2-3 decades back it was considered as a genetic or biochemical disorder. Still it is, but now with increase in our or changes in our lifestyle and food habits, the onset or the prevalence of diabetes is increased, or has been contributed mostly because of, or more because of, our change in the lifestyle disorders which contribute this. So the lecture overview will be this: diabetes and glycation, advanced glycation products. And if time permits, I'll talk about some of the molecules which we are working on to prevent this process of glycation. So we all know that for all kind of cellular event or all kind of event in our body, we have metabolic processes. And if we put it in other words, metabolism is basically interaction of molecules. So some way or other, the molecules interact, and this proper interaction between the molecules is responsible for generation of energy and synthesis of biomolecules which carry out all the functions. So if there is any error in this kind of interaction or this reaction, it leads to a disease condition or becomes a fatal consequences for the. So these consequences may be because of the toxic accumulation of reaction products in the cell, damage due to oxidation, deficiency of an enzyme or protein, or overstimulation of certain reaction pathways. And one such reaction which we are going to discuss today is glycation, which is in very simple terms a non-enzymatic interaction between the sugar and proteins. I will deliberate on that in detail in the next few slides. So I always, being a biochemist, I always wonder that why glucose has become a culprit. It is one of the most wonderful molecules, and we all know, being a student of biology and life sciences, we all know that it is one of the most wonderful molecule. It is helpful in many of the energy processes and cellular activities. It works as a precursor as well, which we don't realize sometimes. So most of the organisms, they use this molecule for various purposes. The two main purposes are the energy and carbon skeleton provision. So glucose metabolism, I am sure we all have read, and I am not going to talk about this. There are glycolysis process. Then we have gluconeogenesis, pentose phosphate pathway, glycogenolysis, glycogenesis. All these are processes which are somehow related to glucose. So they are primary and secondary metabolism. So even if there is a minor fluctuation in metabolism of glucose, the function of many organs and tissues, they go haywire and lead to a disease condition. So as far as glucose metabolism impairment is concerned, we see two conditions, that is hypoglycemia and hyperglycemia. A cartoon represents here. In the blood, you can see that there is less amount of glucose, and normoglycemic level is that you have normal level of glucose molecules, and hyperglycemia, we have large number of glucose molecules in our circulatory system. So we all know that, and we have been reading that India is going to become the diabetes capital of India by 2030 or 2020 or 2040, because we have seen a fourfold rise in the number of diabetics from 108 million to 422 million all over the world or globally, and half of this population which is diabetic is living in India, China, USA, Brazil, and Indonesia. And as I mentioned previously, that this increase in the number is also because of changing in the lifestyle and our food habits. So a general estimation says that out of 100 diabetic people, 30 live in India. So it has become a major health concern for all countries, especially our countries. And you might have read about, we are hearing about that those who are diabetics, they are more prone to suffer from COVID-19 and other conditions. So this is a rough estimation that by 2045, the global population of diabetics will cross 600 million. So that is a very alarming situation, and that is a economic burden on the countries. So basically, if we see the biochemistry of diabetes, it says that it either originates from or manifests the dysregulation of glucose metabolism. So it can be anything, underutilization or overutilization or whatever. And it has been considered as one of the most prevalent metabolic disorders. There are many other metabolic disorders, but it has become a major concern. So the two major type of diabetes we come across is type 1 and type 2. One is insulin dependent and the other one is insulin dependent. So I'll not go into that. There are gestational and other types of diabetes also. So as a result of diabetes, or in other words, impairment in the metabolism of glucose, the other pathways which get impaired, and they are manifested in the form of obesity, nephropathy, hypertension, dyslipidemia, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, systematic inflammation. So we might have heard about that, that those who are diabetics, they suffer from multiple organ failure, because all these metabolic processes, they are important for our other organs also. So as you can see that diabetes is a condition, but it also leads to other complications, what we call as diabetes and secondary complications of diabetes mellitus. So you can see that these are some disorders or disease conditions like oxidative stress, we have carbonyl stress, increased protein kinase C activity, Ages hypothesis, and high bone mineral density. So if you try to summarize that, the major causes and manifestations of type 2 diabetes are inflammation, toxicity, oxidation, and glycation. So how do we manage diabetes? Okay. So there are several ways by which clinicians or physicians or diabetologists try to manage the diabetic condition by activation of AMPK, inhibition of glycosylation of hemoglobin, modulation of glucose uptake, inhibition of aldose pathway, AGE inhibition. So these all includes medication. Now, apart from these medications, doctor also suggests that one should change the lifestyle, one should do morning walk, one should do physical activity so that the glucose molecules and other metabolites are used properly and they don't get accumulated in the body. So as I mentioned previously, that the two symptoms which are encountered in diabetes are hyperglycemia and hyperlipidemia. So because of these conditions, we see major inflammatory responses. And as I mentioned, that diabetes is one of the comorbid situation during the major comorbid situation during the COVID-19. So that is because it induces inflammatory responses like glucose oxidation, induction of polyol pathway, glycation of proteins. And the one thing which has been well researched upon in last 2 decades is that diabetes leads to generation of oxidation stress or generation of reactive oxygen species. So this makes the situation very difficult for a person who is suffering from diabetes, or it leads to more complications of diabetes. So ultimately, all these factors, they affect the antioxidant defense system. So as a result of sustained hyperglycemia, we see deterioration of blood vessels and which lead to damage to the vital body organs like kidney, nervous systems, eyes, heart, or liver. What we call as, if we see all these situations, a person who is having diabetes may suffer from multiple organ failure because, as I mentioned, that this condition affects all the metabolic processes and all the organs and all the cells of the body. So this condition of hyperglycemia is augmented in the form of macrovascular or microvascular. Macrovascular includes heart attack, stroke, and peripheral vascular disease. Microvascular, retinopathy, neuropathy, and nephropathy. So I hope my fellow colleagues and my dear students are trying to understand this, because I'm not going into detail. What I'm trying to come to is what is the biochemistry of this glycation and what happens during the process of glycation. So the modern theory of hyperglycemia says that all types of diabetes has two common features. One is hyperglycemia and the other is consequence of that hyperglycemia. It is known as glucotoxicity. Means there is an abnormal level of glucose which becomes toxic to our body. So we can realize that it is one of the wonderful molecule which becomes toxic to our body because it has crossed the threshold value in the, and threshold value we know that it's 70 to 100 milligram per 100 ml in normal condition. And so hyperglycemia leads to accumulation of undesired products due to excess amount of glucose present in the body. And how does that happen? That is what I'm going to discuss. So ultimately, coming to this conclusion of diabetes and hyperglycemia, the modern theory of diabetes says that it is because it is a manifestation of, or it results in oxidative stress and glycation. Okay. And these two processes are being assumed as responsible for all the secondary complications of diabetes. So this is what I'm trying to come to. When there is a hyperglycemic condition for long term, this glucose molecule, which is quite reactive because of its carbonyl group, because of its reducing nature, it can bring about modification in the proteins. And these different modifications are protein carbonylation, protein nitration, succination, protein smolylation, protein acetylation, and protein nitrosylation, and protein glycation. So what does it mean? It means that the sustained hyperglycemia or a long-term hyperglycemic condition in our body leads to the modification of proteins. And who is culprit behind that? The glucose molecule, because it can react with the protein and modify the protein. In simple terms, if there is a modification of the protein will lose its function and the organ will not perform its normal function because of this changes or alteration in the or loss of function of protein. So this is the major consequence which we see during hyperglycemic condition in the body. So I hope this is very clear too. So I'm coming to the one of these modifications which happen in the body, and that is a post-translational modification. This happens normally also, means under normoglycemic condition level condition also, but the effect of this process is realized when there is a hyperglycemic condition for long term. Now what it is? So a very simple definition is a spontaneous non-enzymatic covalent interaction between the amino group of the proteins or other nitrogenous compounds and the carbonyl group of the sugars. Okay, so this is a very basic reaction which happens during normal condition also, but body has the mechanism to take care of all this harmful or deleterious effect of glycation under the normal conditions. But what happens during the hyperglycemia? There is an increased rate of glycation because there is high level of sugar in the body. So there is an increased rate of glycation, and this process being non-enzymatic, it is uncontrolled and it leads to generation of very harmful products which cause loss to many of the molecules in the body. So one must realize that it is different from the glycosylation, which we see once a protein is being synthesized in the endoplasmic reticulum and Golgi apparatus, or is synthesized. That process is known as glycosylation. So this process is also known as non-enzymatic glycosylation, to make it different from the glycosylation, which is a very tightly controlled process in the endoplasmic reticulum and the Golgi apparatus. So this process, I'm sure that all of us have understood the meaning of glycation, that it is a non-enzymatic covalent process which happens between the sugars and other molecules which have free amino groups. So you may also realize that we have used the phrase long-lived proteins. Why? Because we'll see that this process is non-enzymatic, so it takes it is a very slow process. It takes several weeks to happen. So this is what happens when you have high level of glucose in the body. So this is circulation, where glucose is flowing in the body, in the circulatory system. And you have other proteins. We all know that albumin is one of the major serum protein. We also have hemoglobin, and both these proteins which are there in the circulation in large amount, and they have longer shelf half-lives. So they come across this sugar molecules, and there is an interaction between them, and there is a formation of advanced glycation products. So this figure clearly shows that. So there is a glucose molecule which interacts with the amino group of the proteins, leads to formation of very famous intermediate which we call as CIF base, and then we have this further undergoes modification. This leads to Amadori products, which we have in the form of glycosylamines or fructosamines. And ultimately, these products get modified and converted to advanced glycation end products. So just below these intermediates and products, you can see that duration is mentioned. So conversion of glucose to CIF bases takes hours to days. From CIF base to Amadori products, it takes days to weeks. And from Amadori products to AGEs, it takes several weeks to. So the process is quite slow, but once it happens, it is irreversible. Once the glycation, this Amadori product is formed and it is on the way to get converted to AGEs, there is no reversal. So although it has taken several weeks to get generated, it will affect the other molecules, other short-lived proteins also. Okay. So we can see here that glucose is increased in the blood vessels and hyperglycemic condition is established that leads to inflammation, oxidation that leads to increased glycation and inflammation and damage to most of these organs and tissues of our body. So the process of glycation is very clear to all of us. Now this process can be divided into 2 or 3 stages depending on how do you classify. Some people classify it in divided into 3 stages and some people divide into 3. So let's for our convenience, we will divide it into 3 stages. Early stage where the reaction starts between the glucose carbonyl group of the glucose. Let me make it very clear. Any carbonyl group of any sugar can react with a protein. It's not just glucose. In fact, there are sugars which have more reactive carbonyls like fructose and ribose. So in those cases, the rate of amount of glycation will be higher as compared to glucose. But we all know that the amount of glucose is much, much higher than other sugars. So generally, when we talk about glycation and secondary complications of glucose, diabetes, we take glucose into consideration. So this interaction between the amino group and the carbonyl group leads to the formation of CIF base. And this CIF base undergo reversible modifications or rearrangements to lead to the production of early glycation products. So you can see this here, early stages CIF bases and Amadori products. Amadori products are basically ketamines, and they are given the name because it was discovered by Amadori, a scientist. So then we have intermediate stage where these Amadori products get converted to dicarbonyl compounds. And as I mentioned, once this stage is reached, it cannot go back. Like Amadori products can go back to the CIF bases, but dicarbonyl compounds cannot go back to the Amadori products. Once they are synthesized, they will get converted to advanced end glycation products. Although this stage is slow, but once dicarbonyl compounds are formed, they lead to this group of deleterious compounds. So next comes to intermediate stage where I have mentioned that reactive dicarbonyls are formed. So glucose is monocarbonyl, means it is having a single carbonyl group, or fructose is having a single carbonyl group, so it is called as monocarbonyl. But as a result of this glycation, we see more reactive dicarbonyls form. These are glyoxal, methyl glyoxal, and deoxyglucosone. So during the glycation process or hyperglycemia, there is an increased level of this metabolites in the cell, and they are very reactive. In fact, one of the papers says that methyl glyoxal is 200 times more reactive than glucose. So one can assume that once this Mg is formed in the body, it can react and it can hamper the functioning of the body. So the last stage or late stage is Amadori products rearrange themselves through several processes, all non-enzymatic. These are oxidation, reductions, and hydrations, and they form cross-linked proteins. So what happens when the two proteins are cross-linked or they get aggregated? They lose their function. So they are marked for proteolysis by the systems. Okay. So the final brownish products which is formed in the system is known as advanced glycation products. I'll come to this why brownish product is mentioned. I have mentioned here. So it is very clear that it's an irreversible process, and it takes several days or or weeks or months to get generated. So mostly those proteins which have longer half-lives, they are more prone to glycation. This protein includes albumin, hemoglobin, collagen, and some other proteins. But once these advanced glycation products, they can affect the normal short-lived proteins also. So this is the scheme which I mentioned about. We all know the structure of glucose. So amino acid, glycosylamine is formed, glycosylamine to amadori compound, and then one of the example of this advanced glycation product is hydroxymethylfurfural or MG or so glycemia and glycation. Glycemia means the level of glucose in the blood. So as I mentioned that the process of glycation happens continuously, but under normal conditions, the body has a mechanism to take care of that. But under hyperglycemic conditions, when the glucose level is very high or abnormally high, the process of glycation is not taken care of by body. So you can see this cartoon that the amount of glycated albumin decreases when the blood glucose levels are low and increase when the blood glucose levels are high. So one can measure the amount of glycated albumin in the blood also. So when we go to a diabetologist or a pathologist, generally 3 types of tests are done. We may not be aware because we don't come across this term very. We all know that blood glucose are measured fasting and postprandial. That gives an idea about the several hours. Then we have glycated hemoglobin, the albumin, that gives an idea about the hyperglycemic condition for about 2 weeks, 4 weeks. On the other hand, if we measure glycated hemoglobin, it can give us idea about the hyperglycemic condition of past 3 months, because the half-life of hemoglobin is 90 to 120 days. So this is one of the major parameter. The test is slightly costly, but many of the physicians are now relying on this test. So this glycated hemoglobin, we may not be aware of the term, but it is written as HbA1c on the clinical test. So I hope someone might have seen that that terminology during study of diabetes and something. So in one of the sentences, I mentioned that the final brownish product is called as advanced glycation product. Before we came across this term glycation, we all knew about this reaction, Maillard reaction, which were discovered by Louis Camille Maillard in 1912 when he was heating amino acids and reducing sugar together, and that resulted in color change or yellowish brown. So this has become, this is known as Maillard reaction. So those who are working on glycation or those who are working in the food industry, they are aware of this Maillard reaction, both for good reasons and bad reasons. Okay. So you can see that when you cook the food, when you bake the food, eating, this color of the baked item change to brownish. So now you can understand what is the reason behind that browning which we have in fried or cooked or baked items. That is because of the Maillard reaction, and that is so it is good because the food industry likes it because it produces flavor and aroma during the cooking process. It is used everywhere from baking to the dairy industry, but it is also a concern for food industry because it affects the quality of the food items. So these baked items or these brownish items, they are not stable, and sometimes they generate some kind of, they compromise the stability of the food items. So roasted coffee flavor, the yellow gold color of French fries, golden brown color of bread, all these things are because of the Maillard reaction. And Maillard reaction, in very simple terms for our biochemistry or our biology students, is basically the reaction between the sugars and proteins. So acrylamide, we have come across, we have used it in our lab for protein gel and other things. They are also synthesized during the Maillard reaction, which are formed as a reaction between the asparagine and a dicarbonyl. It is found in many foods, and it has become a major concern because cancer biologists, they consider it as a potent carcinogen. So the level of acrylamide should be very low in the food. So now I'm coming to advanced glycation products. It's a very heterogeneous group of molecules. There are more than 200 different types of ages which have been identified. The three major route for the formation of ages are auto-oxidation of sugars, means it does not involve an interaction between protein and sugar. The sugars undergo auto-oxidation, Amadori rearrangements, and Schiff adducts. So there can be two sources of ages. One is indigenous and another is exogenous. I mentioned that indigenous is that when there's hyperglycemic condition, there will be an increased rate of glycation and increased rate of formation of ages. Exogenous sources are ingested food, which are also becoming a major concern. So these are the three different processes by which they are formed. So there are two common features which most of these advanced glycation products they share. They share cross-linking and fluorescence. So they may be fluorescent, non-fluorescent, and examples which are measured in the body as a biomarker for glycation or advanced glycation products. They are carboxymethyl lysine, ethyl lysine, pyrrolene, pentosiidine. They are these. You can see that these are the structure of some of the commonly established advanced glycation. So what are the factors which affect the production of ages in our body? One is oxygen. The other one is reactive oxygen species, what we call in short as ROS, and the metals also increases the rate of the formation of advanced glycation products. Similarly, diet and smoking also influence the production of ages in our body. So what happens? How do ages play a role in the diabetes? We can see that there is a condition, hyperglycemia, that leads to increased mitochondrial production of reactive oxygen species, that leads to oxidative stress, that leads to beta cell dysfunction, which produces insulin, and we see diabetes condition. Similarly, this glucose molecules, they get converted to ages by interacting with proteins, or as a result of auto-oxidation. They bind to a receptor which belongs to a family of immunoglobulins. They are known as receptors for ages. In short, they are known as RAGE. They bind to NF cells and lead to the generation of ROS. That leads to NF-kappa B activation, inflammation, insulin resistance, and contributes to diabetes. So where do we measure these ages? We can measure these ages in various parts of the body. We can measure them in eye. I'll tell you that cataract is one of the consequences of advanced glycation products, where galactose is converted to galactitol. We can measure it in blood. We can measure it in skin. I have mentioned that these ages interact with the collagen. We can measure them in urine and cartilage also. So one of the parameters which we check for diabetic condition is glycated hemoglobin, which we, in short, it is written on the report as HbA1c. So as I mentioned that it is there, but I think the normal level is 6. HbA1c normal level is 6. If it increases beyond 6, it means there is a hyperglycemic condition, and this hyperglycemic condition has been persistent for more than several weeks. So it gives an idea of a diabetic condition for almost 3 to 4 months. So you can see here, you have normal hemoglobin, but this is the glycated hemoglobin. So this hampers the normal functioning of the hemoglobin as well. So these are the pathophysiological conditions, or what we call as secondary complications of diabetes, which we see because of the glycation. We have aging, diabetes mellitus, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, cataracts, retinopathy. So this diagram shows all those. So at molecular level, what are the processes which are affected by glycation? So these advanced glycation products, they lead to precipitation of proteins, cross-linking of proteins, aggregation of proteins, generation of reactive oxygen and nitrogen species, and damage to the DNA, as well as damage to the membranes by damaging the lipid molecules in the membrane. So these are the molecular mechanisms by which. Now, how do we take care of this this glycation in our body in the normal scenario? So we have enzyme systems, aldehyde reductase, glyoxylase, or amidoriases, which are known as anti-glycating enzymes, which are there in the system. We have proteasome system, which degrades age-modified proteins. I mentioned about that the proteins get aggregated or they get cross-linked. So once these kind of modifications happen to the protein, they are marked for degradation by our proteasome systems. We have a processing mechanism through age receptors, what we call as RAGEs. We have macrophage system, disposal of peptides. We have one approved drug which is known as aminoguanidine, but of late we have realized that it has its own side effect. Vitamins play a very good role in taking care of this glycation products, and scientists are looking for anti-glycating agents and antioxidants. So what are the suggestions? How do we reduce our advanced glycation products? These are some common steps. We need to reduce our consumption of sugars, of course. Eat vegetables and fruits, raw, boiled, or steamed. Limit our consumption of processed and brown foods, as I mentioned that it is one of the exogenous source of ages. Cook meats low and slow. Avoid high fructose corn syrup, because I mentioned that fructose is more reactive than glucose. So similarly, some people have coined the term that is known as fructation, which is similar to glycation, but we can include that process in the glycation itself. We need to drink lots of water. Supplement with pyridoxamine, a form of vitamin C, which has been established as a major antioxidant as well as anti-glycating agent. Stop smoking. So I mentioned about this receptor for ages, which are found in many cells, and many of these consequences of ages are because of the binding of ages to RAGEs. So now people are talking about developing a drug which can interfere with the binding of age to RAGE. So people are using different approaches like docking and other things. So I think how much time I have? Should I come to?
More 10 minutes.
Pardon?
More 10 minutes, sir.
10 minutes. Okay, thank you. So as I mentioned about some of the steps which we can take to reduce the advanced glycation products in our body. Similarly, biochemical mechanisms or medicinal approaches are that there to prevent the age formation. But I mentioned that once the stage 2 is crossed, it is very difficult to prevent the formation of edges. So one of the easiest thing is that we reduce our consumption of sugar and we change our lifestyle. So preventing the edge formation of edges by using inhibitors like ascorbic acid, aspirin, or metformin, deglycation of CYP bases by using drugs like hydrazine, reversal of age-induced modifications like crosslinks with the help of phenylthiazide bromide, and we can prevent the ill effects by using the natural compounds like resveratrol or curcumin. So this is the different, or what we can say that there can be different approach to prevent the formation of edges. So that includes redoxyl phosphate or gentamicin or phytate or other molecules. So we can rely upon vitamins. We can rely upon this approved drugs like aminoguanidine or arginine. So we have, as I mentioned, that this is our own body system, intrinsic system, where this enzymes play a role in removal of this or decreasing the formation of advanced glycation products. These include amidoriases, deglycases, and ketoamine 3 kinases. But of late, there has not been much research on these enzymes. So how do we measure? How do we quantify whether there is a formation of glycation in the lab, and the molecule which we are going to test, whether this is working as anti-glycating or not? So we have several spectrophotometric tests like nitroblue tetrazolium for detection of early glycation products like fructosamine. We have dinitrophenylhydrazine for measurement of protein oxidation products. We have DTNB for measurement of thiol group modification. We have Congo Red and thioflavin T for measurement of or assessment of glycation-induced aggregation. We have T-bars assay for measurement of malondialdehyde or other reactive molecules. We can use other sophisticated analytical techniques like ELISA, HPLC, LCMS, fluorescence spectroscopy, or chromatographic techniques for measurement of this measurement of both glycated products as well as the anti-glycating potential of natural products or plants. So in our lab, we have worked with several compounds. Some of them are artificial, some of them are natural. So here I'm talking about thymine, curcumin, and thymoquinone. These are well-known natural compounds which have been worked since last several centuries. And I also selected this sweetener. This is an FDA-approved sweetener which we have in our beverages and food. And of late, the consumption of artificial sweetener has increased manifold because of two reasons. One is that they are low calorie, and the second reason is that they are more stable, less or cheaper, and so they have been approved by the FDA. So what are the assays which we have done? We have done a measurement of browning, NBT assays or carbonyl content, total edges, aggregation, glycoxidative damage, and fluorescent studies, structural alteration, docking, or aggregation by. So I'll not go into detail. These graphs basically show that thymine is a potent anti-glycating molecule because it has caused a reduction of significant amount of advanced glycation products as well as browning. Similarly, curcumin was more effective in bringing or lowering the amount of early and advanced glycation products. I may mention here that these two compounds or the other compounds which we have used, they are well-known antioxidants also. Now, people are saying that any molecule which acts as antioxidant can also act as anti-glycating molecule. So carbonyl content is basically measurement of protein oxidation. If we see that there is a decrease in protein oxidation or carbonyl content, it can also be because of the antioxidant property of the molecules. So this was a basically interaction study which we have done with the BSA, between the BSA and curcumin. We could clearly show that there is a quenching of BSA. It means curcumin interacts with BSA. That is a basic parameter which is used for establishing that whether a molecule will act as a drug or not. Similarly, we used thymoquinone, the major phytoconstituent of black cumin seeds or Nigella sativa or Kalonji, what we call in our. So this was found to be the most potent molecule, and we have published recently a paper in a very good journal also on this work. So here we show that there is a decreased production of glycation products. Here we show that there is a reduction in the aggregation, and this aggregation is induced by glycation. So we could show that this molecule, thymoquinone, is effective against reducing the glycation-induced aggregation, and we have shown separately that it can prevent the thermal aggregation also. So this is a spectrophlorimetric measurement where we have measured the total amount of fluorescent edges, and we could show that at 20 micromolar, thymoquinone was very efficient in bringing down the level of advanced glycation products. We did a similar kind of interaction study between the thymoquinone and BSA, what we had done with curcumin. And here also we could show that there is a quenching, there is a interaction between the molecules. And here we are showing that the damage of DNA which is induced because of the glycation, and we have used the term glycoxidative damage. So this is a process where the damage is both because of the glycation as well as oxidation. That is what we call as glycoxidation. So glycoxidation causes damage to the DNA. I'll just briefly explain here. The first lane, the first band in the first lane, it is a simple DNA, that is PBr322, which we use for cloning and other studies in the recombinant technology. So we could show that this is a supercoiled form of PBr322, which is not damaged. Similarly, thymoquinone didn't cause any damage to the DNA. But when we added this glycation system, you can see that this glycation system has caused a damage to the DNA, and this can be realized in the change in the conformation of this PBr322. The supercoiled form has got converted to circular form. And in the fourth lane, if we add thymoquinone in the glycation system, we can show that the reversal of damage has happened. So to conclude with, thymoquinone is also preventing the damage to the DNA or glycoxidative damage to the DNA. That may be because of the anti-glycation as well as antioxidant properties. So now we have done this study with the A-sulfame potassium, and to our surprise, since last 3-4 years we are working on this molecule, we found that this molecule is a potent anti-glycating because it has caused a decrease in the amount of glycation products at both early as well as advanced level. It also reduced the formation of aggregation of the proteins. That is because of the glycation process. We also show that A-sulfame potassium causes a drastic decrease in the total edges, total advanced glycation products. So independently, we did a study where we could show that the thermal aggregation is also prevented by A-sulfame potassium. And we did a similar kind of a study with the DNA also. And we could show that you can see here lane 2 is DNA is damaged to circular and linear. And in lane 4, we could show that A-sulfame potassium has, or lane 5, A-sulfame potassium has caused the reversal of the DNA damage. We did a similar kind of fluorescence emission spectra quenching study. we could show that with increasing concentration, there is more quenching that reflects. This is what a major proof where we could show that A-sulfame potassium has reduced the aggregation of the proteins. We did this transmission electron spectroscopy. So we did a DLSA study where we could show that reduction in size of glycated protein samples in the presence of A-sulfame. Similarly, we did a docking study and we could show that the binding residues are similar for glucose and A-sulfame potassium. So this may probably prove that the reason behind this anti-glycating property of A-sulfame potassium could be the similar binding site, and there is a competition between the binding of binding to the protein between the glucose and A-sulfame. Some of or sometimes we are not aware that albumin has several other activities like antioxidant, and it has also an intrinsic activities which is known as esterase activity. So during the glycation process, this esterase activity is reduced significantly. So we checked whether this significant change in the esterase activity is reversed in the presence of A-sulfame or not. So we could show that that A-sulfame normalizes the esterase activity of BSA. So finally, with all these studies that are research, but before that, I will conclude that that glucose is a very wonderful molecule, but if the amount of glucose is not taken care of in our body, this will lead to a disastrous effect because of its mild reactivity, and this is reflected in the modification of proteins by various mechanisms. And one of them is one of the major one is glycation. So, and we have seen in this that what could be the consequences of this glycation. We see formation of tens of hundreds of these glycation products which affect the structure or which affect the structure and function of proteins, which affect the structure and function of nucleic acids and many other biomolecules in our body. So, and they also lead to the generation of reactive oxygen species. So there are multi-age by which this glycation products work, and they cause deleterious or harmful effects. So we have shown that these some natural compounds, they can be used as a potent anti-glycating agent. They can also be used to prevent the aggregation. So I have received funding from different agencies, and I have some collaborators, and 3 of my PhD students are working on similar projects. They are working on natural compounds from other sources as well as A-sulfame. So
thank you. So one question, how do we prevent the formation of Amadori products?
Amadori products can be formed by using hydrazines, which can block the formation of CIF base. And that CIF base is because of the formation of interaction between the glucose and or carbonyl group and amino group. So if we prevent this interaction between the sugars and the proteins in cell, so the one way is that we reduce the amount of glucose. Otherwise, we can use some kind of this aminoguanidine molecules or pyridoxamine, which have been shown to prevent or lower the formation of CIF bases. So once this CIF bases are formed, Amadori products are formed. So hydrazine, which can scavenge the amino group in the CIF bases, can be a very good molecule.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir, for this wonderful knowledge you have shared with us. It will be beneficial and helpful for all the participants. Very informative and well organized. It provides the scientific depth to explain the major conditions of hyperglycemia, which is the need for many diabetic patients. Very well explained the origin of complication of diabetes and its management. It gives us brief idea of glycation, which is non-enzymatic process, and its role in hyperglycemia. We are fortunate to have you with us for today's session. I really appreciate the tremendous efforts given by you for making this event successful. Now I request Dr. Reshma Javeria to propose vote of thanks.
Good afternoon, one and all. I take this opportunity to propose vote of thanks on behalf of Department of Biotechnology. I would like to express my gratitude to our beloved principal, Maulana Azad College of Arts, Science and Commerce, Dr. Mazhar Ahmed Farooqi sir, who has always been a source of inspiration and motivation for all of us. He has permitted and encouraged us to organize this event. I extend my sincere thanks to Dr. Arif Pathan sir, in charge director, Dr. Rafiq Zakaria, Center for Higher Learning and Advanced Research, for his constant support, guidance, motivation, and providing us all the technical facilities. Speaker, Dr. Ahmed Ali sir, who delivered very nice and informative lecture on a topic, sugar-induced changes in the structure of biomolecules in hyperglycemic conditions. I would also like to thank Vice Principal Dr. M.A. Bari sir, IQAC Coordinator Dr. Aditi Bhattacharya Madam, NAC Coordinator Mr. Rajan Shinde sir, and Dr. Syed Sultan sir. I would like to express my sincere thanks to Convener Mehwish Fatima Madam, Organizing Committee, Department of Biotechnology, for conducting such an informative lecture. I am equally thankful to all the technical staff for their support. Last but not least, I would like to thank our participants for their active participation. Thank you one and all. The session is over now.